next went up to Leeds, when we were fitted out with the tropical kit. Now, we didn't know where we were going, but at the time we thought we was going to Singapore. And from Leeds we were taken up to Glasgow and taken down to the docks and put aboard a ship called the Largs Bay. And from there we went out down the Clyde, round the north coast of Ireland, and seemed to be going straight out in the Atlantic. Anyway, we wandered about in the Atlantic, and then were joined by a lot more ships and formed a large convoy and went down along the coast of Africa, called in at Freetown, and then our ship, the Largs Bay, left the convoy and we went on alone. We went round the Cape of Good Hope, and up the coast in the Indian Ocean to a place called Durban. Now at Durban we were put on shore and stayed at camp just outside the town. Durban was a lovely city and very modern, and they seemed full of everything that we wanted, and they'd give us everything we wanted. We had fruit in abundance, food, and what to us was by then rather remarkable, all the street lights and no blackouts anywhere, and it was just like peacetime. Well, after about a fortnight enjoying the hospitality of the South Africans, and they were hospitable, we were taken back to the docks and expected going aboard the Largs Bay again, but we found out it had gone, and in its place was a boat called the Nova Scotia. The Nova Scotia was only about half or a third size of the Largs Bay, and we found out that when it was travelling at speed it was rather uncomfortable to be in, particularly as we were in the nose part of it. But we continued on up the coast of Africa, and we called in at a place called Mombasa, and then from Mombasa we turned across and went to India. Now I want to just point out one of the sad facts about the Nova Scotia. On the next trip it left us at Bombay, and then it went up to the Suez, and it came back with a lot of Italian prisoners, and it was sunk by a German submarine off Durban with the loss of most of its personnel. Hundreds of Italian prisoners of war, and the crew members who I had got to know well, they were all drowned or eaten by sharks, because that area was absolutely packed, blocked with sharks, and no one could expect to live 5 minutes in that water. Well, from Bombay we were sent up to Delhi and stopped for several weeks there, and didn't enjoy it because Delhi at that time was exceptionally hot. In fact, it was that hot and dry that if you washed the shirt and then carried it out over your arm for a few minutes, it was dry enough to put on. And also the bread was newly baked. By the time it got to you, it had to be cut with a saw. They couldn't cut it with knives. So it gives you an idea how hot and dry the climate of Delhi was at that particular time of the year we were there. From there we went across to Calcutta, we billeted on the racecourse. Now that wasn't so bad there, except for one thing. We were billeted in the stands, on the stands, not underneath, and while we was there, of course, we had to feed, and when we went for our food down at the cookhouse, we found out that if you didn't keep your arm moving over the top of the plate or dixie or canteen or tin that you had your food in, what happened was it was absolutely covered with flies, and what the flies didn't get, the hawks used to get quicker. If someone just spoke to you and you just stopped and moved your hand, you could be sure your plate would be empty. Hawk would swoop down and take it off your plate. It was rather fun to see someone else's meals go like that, but not your own. But the flies were the worst. I think it's remarkable that we all didn't die of dysentery or something like that. Well, the time came when, of course, we moved on from there. We went on to Sealder Station and then up the line going towards Assam. We came to a railhead, and then we got on a ship or a boat, a river boat, paddle steamer, and went up the river. And the river was that wide in places that you couldn't see land at either side, although at that time it was at least 1,000 miles from the coast. But anyway, when we got off the boat, we got on another train and went up the rail as far as Dimapur, which was the railhead. While at Dimapur I had a leave, and I chose to go to a place called Darjeeling, which is right in the Himalayas. And the journey by rail is the most remarkable journey I think that I've ever had in my life. It's a narrow gauge railway, and it twists and turns, and the hill's so steep at times that it goes as far as it can and then backs up another backwards for so far, and then forward again, and keeps going backward and forwards up the hillside until it finally gets to a gradient that it can tackle. Now behind each coach there's a man stood out in the open with his foot on a great bar, and if he jumps onto this bar it applies a brake, and that's one of the safeguards they have on this railway. You go up right through the clouds, and you get to a place, again I can't remember the name of it, but it's the only place I've ever been to when I've had what I can really call a perfect cup of tea. And then down into Darjeeling itself. Darjeeling, there's Lebong racecourse, which is the highest racecourse in the world, and ponies used to race on that in the morning. While on leave in Darjeeling, we saw all the great mountains, Kanchenjunga, Mount Everest, and all the other range of world famous and enormous mountains covered with snow. I also remember going down into the marketplace, and there was a circle of natives all round a man who had a large basket in his hand. This basket was about 2'6", 3 foot across it, but only about 1 foot high, and only had a sort of a narrowish neck. But he was lifting it up and waving it about to the crowd, and his assistant had a flute and an old blanket. Now, he finally put this basket on the floor in the centre of this circle and covered it with an old blanket. Started playing the flute. Imagine my surprise, and I suppose the others were surprised as well. We saw the blanket gradually rising, and it appeared to be a head, a boy's head or something like that, underneath the blanket, and it rose further until it looked like a boy covered by a blanket from head to right down to the basket. The man gave up playing his flute and shouted. The boy's voice answered. Then the flute player drew a huge dagger and got hold of the boy's head and stabbed into apparently into the neck of the boy with this dagger. Well, blood spurted out all over, and the man holding the dagger by its hilt pulled it back and forwards and jerked the head one way or another, because the dagger had gone right through the blanket, in at one side and out at the other. Then he drew it out. He played his flute a bit longer and then flung the blanket off the boy, who wasn't harmed in any way, and apparently had a lot of blood running down his neck, but when he came close to me, he was collecting with a hat by this time, or a tin or something. There was no sign of any damage whatever to him. I still don't know how this was worked, but it was a very clever trick. And I have seen them snake charming and things like that, but I never did see the rope trick. I never saw that one. I saw a lot of different other tricks, but I never saw that one where the boy's supposed to climb the rope and disappear. I didn't see that one. Anyway, we get back to from our leave, and we went back to Dimmelpur, and day came when we had to move from there, and we went further up right up to Manipur, and from there we wandered about a bit, and then we were withdrawn and we flew in with the Chindits. Now when we flew in as a Chindit, we went over 200 miles further into Burma than the Japanese forward troops were, and we was just in a area, they termed it for our purposes Aberdeen. There's a bit of a river there, and hills, and no roads. There were no vehicular traffic at all in that area until we took some jeeps, flew 'em in, and a lot of our lads had landed by parachute, some had gone in by gliders, and I went in what they call a Dakota, and while I was there we had quite an exciting time. The Japanese got to know we were there, and they couldn't get at us by land, so they came to try to damage us by air. Well, every morning at dawn they used to send these fighter bombers over, and you could hear them coming in the distance, and you'd see them, and the leading plane, when he was going to start his attack, used to waggle his wings, and then in you knew they used to be coming. Well, down they used to come down the runway, firing the machine guns, dropping the bombs, and we used to bang away at them, and quite a bit of fun. And then we knew it was all right until dusk again. Well, at dusk they used to come again. Sometimes late at night they would come and try to shoot up any cargo planes which we were having brought in to supply us with goods. Finally the Japanese got just a little bit fed up with us, and they intended to wipe us out, because the idea of the Chindits was to have a little bit of a place like we had, fortresses you might call it, although there were no walls, and just barbed wire round a bit of hillock, and then from there our lads would go out and they'd find a railway line and maybe a bridge or two, and they'd blow it. they'd find a Japanese convoy going up somewhere, and they would flamethrow it, use flamethrowers against it, and they'd make a bit of a mess. So the Japanese, I say, we were just being a bit of a nuisance to the Japanese because we were behind their lines. And as things went on, I say, they got fed up with us. So up the line came some Japanese Imperial troops. Now they came to attack a place called Blackpool. All our little encampments were called different names. Well, Blackpool was astride the railway, just a bit further north than where we were. We weren't actually astride the railway, we were 10 miles off. But when we had some troops on the railway at that point, and the Japanese we could hear them all day, bang, bang, banging away, our lads bang, banging away back at them, and they used to have a tough time. And every now and again, some more lads would go out from our place and reinforce the people who were getting hammered. But this Blackpool, there were a lot of Gurkhas there, and some of our lads, some, in fact, my friends, and they had a raid. As I say, these Imperial Guards got out of the train, they saw them get out of the train, and they all formed up, and for some reason or other they weren't allowed to fire on them, and they let the Japanese march away from the train, and then finally the Japanese attacked, and they just went over our lines just like a dose of salts. A lot of our lads got killed there, but as I say, I wasn't in that particular lot. I was at Aberdeen. I remember a lot of Dakotas came in at night. It used to be 50 or 60 came in practically every night bringing supplies, and the Japanese used to come along and with their night fighters and try to shoot them up as they're landing. Some made, some exploded in flames. There's quite a lot of casualties. One of our planes came in and our gun sight was just at the end of the runway, and it was coming, and when it came over our gun sight, we were at the end of the runway. It had overshot the runway and it was trying to climb up. Well, it went down the river a bit and turned into what was a cul-de-sac between the mountains. It had its landing lights on, showing down to the tree tops. It turned, tried to get elevation, but it couldn't. Finally it came down into the trees, crashed. Well, a burst of flame came up. A party was sent out to try to do what they could for them, and every now and again you heard an explosion. Well, we learned afterwards that this particular group of our lads had been instructed before they were put on board the plane that they had to have 2 or 3 hand grenades round the waist, fastened to the belts. Well, what we heard, these explosions, were these hand grenades going off. As the fire got to the lads who were fastened in the plane, couldn't get out. These explosions kept taking place, and if the lads were still alive, well, it put them out of the misery. After that plane load, I think there's about 2 escaped. The pilot was found about 200 yards away from the plane, sat against a tree with his back to the tree. He was gazing horror-stricken in the direction of the plane. When the searchers found him, they just touched him. He fell over. He was dead. Well, that many things happened while I was in Burma, but I can hardly recount them all. I'll just tell you another couple of things that occurred. For instance, we had one raid and a plane came in and every gun opened up at it and the pilot bailed out, and as he was coming down, each gun sight was coupled to the other with telephones, landlines, and one of the sergeants came from Devon. He was a bit of a rough sort of chap, and he was phoning up to headquarters, and I picked the phone up when I heard it ring and just heard him talking to the officer at headquarters, and he said there's a Japanese pilot going to land quite close to our gun site. Do you want him alive or have I to kill him? Well, the officer says, oh, get him alive if at all possible. He did do. The following day I noticed that this sergeant had a lovely new wristwatch, and on the Japanese airman's wrist there was the white mark where the wristband had been, and our sergeant had a lovely wristwatch, so I don't know whether he had it given or he just won it. That was one raid. I remember the night before we were due to come out of Burma, we were going to be flown out. They took part of our ammunition away and also one of the barrels of the gun. We used to have a spare barrel, and after so many rounds we were supposed to change it to prevent it getting overheated. Well, 14 or 15 planes came in, strapping us. We set to, and just before, I'll start at the beginning, just before the raid started, we were having a swim in this little river, which was within a couple of yards of our gun site. It was built right on the bank, and we were stark naked, of course, and the man on duty who was spotting, he shouts, "Planes!" So we rushed out of the water, wet and still unclothed, and took positions on the gun, spinning it round in the direction of the planes. When they came in, we had rather an hectic half hour firing away. In fact, we fired, I think, about 100 and something shells altogether, and the barrel of the gun got nearly red hot, and in between sort of spasms of the engagement, we rushed down to the water and get a couple of buckets of water and splash on the gun barrel, try to cool it. And anyway, the engagement ended, and just as it finished, on a embankment quite close to us was an American, I don't know, I think he was a newspaper reporter or something, and he had a cine camera, and he patted it and he says, "It's all in the bag, it's all in the can, it's all in the can. I filmed the whole raid, marvellous." So somewhere in America, if it's still on go, is a film of me and several others engaging the enemy in our birthday suits. Well, that's just that one episode. Well, after that we went and we had a look around the gun, and all our equipment had been machine gunned and splintered with anti-fragmentation bombs, and the gun, of course, had four wheels. 3 out of the 4 wheels were punctured, and it looked as though it was a miracle that not one of us was hit. But one of the lads who I thought deserved a bit of praise was a fitter who wasn't really a gunner at all. He'd just come down to check up to see if the gun was in order. And as I said, we was prepared for moving the following morning, and we had our ammunition scattered about, of course, and a lot of it wanted re-clipping. Well, during this engagement he was dragging boxes of ammunition up to the gun and re-clipping ammunition and helping us in every way he could, and most of the time he wasn't behind a bit of an embankment at all. He was just running and grabbing ammunition and coming back to the gun with it. So I think he deserved, well, he deserved a medal, but of course we all did at times, but none of us managed to get one. The only people who got medals seemed to be officers, and they did nothing to deserve it, not in our eyes anyway. Well, after flying out of Burma, we were sent to recuperate, as most of us had lost quite a lot of weight, 2 stone on average, and we were just like walking skeletons, as we hadn't had the proper food, and we hadn't had, well, we had rather a rough time. But apart from that, we was not far from a town. Well, just a dirty bit of a shack place, but there was a cinema, and at night, at least once or twice a week, we was allowed to go to this town to go to the cinema. We went in turns, of course, because we hadn't that much transport. Well, one particular night I know it was my turn to go with some of the lads, and after we'd been to the cinema, we were returning along this long country road, and we was in the back, of course, the driver and his mate in the front. We heard him tooting his horn and trying to get past something, and after a while he succeeded in getting past these vehicles. Now these vehicles that he passed, about half a dozen of them, were bullock carts, you know, a pair of bullocks and a yoke between them, and perched on top of a high load there was a native driver. Now these drivers, of course, were used to travelling at night, and they used to set the carts going in one direction, and they used to fall asleep at the top of the load. Well, that's what had happened that night. All these drivers were fast asleep, and the bullocks were just going along at their own leisurely speed along the road. Our driver, though, seemed to have a different idea. After we got safely past these bullock carts, our driver pulled up the side of the road, and out he jumped and went back down the road to meet the bullock carts. Taking hold of the leading bullock, he led it off the road, round in a large circle on the wide grass verge, and set it going in the direction it had come from. All the other bullocks and the carts just followed it round, and our driver came back to us, and the last thing we saw was the bullock carts going back to where it had set off from. Well, after they thought we'd had a chance to recuperate, they fitted us out with a different type of gun. It was still bolters, but instead of being pulled by a truck, the gun itself was mounted on a truck. And we learned that we was going to go up the Manipa Road, and from there, if things turned out as we wanted, we was going to try to chase the Japs back into, well, chase them out of the Burma and that district completely. But he got firmly entrenched, and it took a bit of shifting. Well, we went along the road, Tidham Road, across mountains, and the roads which had been built by Japs were rather, to say the least, a little bit primitive. For instance, they wanted to take a road not at top of a hill, but at the side of a cliff, and they built a road out just on a piece of wood stuck out, and just like putting a shelf up in a house, and we had to go along this shelf. Well, that was alright for the first vehicle, but we were quite a good way behind, and by the time we were going along this shelf, a lot of the timbers, which were only bamboos, were missing. They jumped up out of position, like weighted vehicles going over them, and you could see straight down beneath and right down at the bottom, hundreds of feet down below, you could see the tree tops. So I personally was rather glad when we got over that stretch of country, particularly as our driver, who was sat at the side nearest the cliff, he seemed to think that he was frightened of hitting the cliff all the time, and keeping as far out to my side, which was overhanging the edge, and I kept saying, for God's sake, get a bit near the cliff edge, because if I do Sarge, I shall be hitting it and bouncing back into space. Anyway, I don't know which of us were right, probably both of us, but we finally got down, and then we got down to the Chindits. Chindits was a fairly wide river, but not quite as wide as the next one we come to, which was the Irrawaddy. Now when we got to the Irrawaddy, they sent us to a place called Thabekin. Now a few of our troops got to the other side and formed a sort of a bridgehead. We was just overlooking the river on a hilltop, and of course the Japanese knew we were there because we'd a highly polished gun and we was right out in the sunshine and everything about us gleamed, and to make things more interesting they made us put a huge barrage balloon quite near us, just to attract attention. Of course we got reacting as bait here with the cheese in the mousetrap, and actually that's what we were there for. One day we went swimming in the Irrawaddy, and it was rather interesting. We were swimming at one side of the river, and at the other side of the river the Japanese troops were swimming. It was a wide river, and unless you was on high ground you couldn't really see anyone at the other side of the river at all. But we did definitely see the Japanese soldiers enjoying a swim at their side of the river, while we swam and enjoyed a swim at our side of the river. Also, one particular point on that opposite bank, the Japanese had got firmly dug in. Now we, at least the powers that be, thought they'd have a smash at him. So they put the field guns, howitzers and whatnot, trained on the area. They also brought in a lot of bombers. The bombers came over and dropped the bombs. Then the field guns started up, and after the field guns it was our turn. Now while all this was going on, our lads had got hold of a football and a bit of level ground, and they was playing football, and I thought it was one of the most amusing things I've seen. Our lads swimming, our lads playing about football, and the other side of the river the Japanese getting shelled to blazes. Anyway, our turn come, so we had to have a go at them. Well, we didn't know what we was hitting, we only knew that there was a lot of holes dug in the bank at the other side, and we were told that Japanese were in these holes, but they didn't interfere with that game of football. I think probably if the shelling and the bombing hadn't been going on, our lads might not have enjoyed the football so much, because we should nearly certainly have had a few mortar shells across at us. One day about this time, a couple of jeep loads of big knobs, chapped with red braid round their hats and on their shoulders, came to visit us, and I think they was going to see all what was supposed to be happening round about there, but when they just got opposite our gun, I've told you it was on a very high point, 4 or 5 Japanese planes come in, No, I'm wrong. 9 Japanese planes came in, and they saw us, of course, and seemed to circle around a little bit, and then decided to attack us. Well, we set off banging away at these planes, and really speaking, you couldn't tell what you hit and what you... Well, you could tell if you'd hit anything, but you couldn't tell whether there was going to come down in flames or if there was damage at all. You could just see puff where it had been hit, but the plane, with it all being forest and mountains, the planes just disappear, and they might come down 2 or 3 miles away from you. They might do anything, you don't know what happened to them. Anyway, we had this raid and we fired at most of these planes in turn, and I think we hit a few of them, but I'm not quite sure what. But immediately after the raid, all these officers from these 2 jeeps came round and says, "How do you do, Sergeant?" I hadn't realised until that moment these officers were still about. I didn't know what had happened to them, but apparently they'd all dived into the undergrowth and had kept their heads down, so they didn't know what had happened. So I just said 5 certainties and 3 probables, and they accepted it as gospel. From Peking we moved in the general direction of Mandalay. Still at our side of the river. Mandalay was mostly on the far side of the river. But when we got about 30 miles north of Mandalay, we crossed over by raft, towed across with an outboard motor, and from there we continued down with a few little hold-ups and setbacks down south towards Mandalay. When the final move came for us to go Mandalay, we were instructed that would be met just outside Mandalay, North Mandalay, by someone who would show us exactly where to turn off and where to go, so that we shouldn't run unexpectedly into the hands of any waiting Japanese. Unfortunately, we must have moved a little bit quicker than our reception committee expected, and our gun, just on its own with the gun crew, found ourselves right in Mandalay, and going along at the side of Fort Dufferin. Oh, we all looked in amazement at this fort with its huge moat round it, a square mile it was, and the huge walls, and there was a gateway where a railway went in at one side. We went over the railway, in fact, and there was a bridge over the moat at this place, which obviously wasn't safe to go across because it'd be mined. And we found out that just as we got past this railway crossing, no one was in sight, just us, and the whole world was ours. We had some heavy bombers coming, and there's about 30 or 40 big American bombers come over and started bombing. They were low, started bombing Fort Dufferin. Well, a lot of the bombs dropped in the fort area, like, but although it was broad daylight and they were very low, a lot of the bombs dropped over the fort at the other side, and unfortunately, to my knowledge, they killed 16 of our lads. The Americans were a bit unlucky that way. They often seem to be careless as to where they dropped the bombs, and they did drop them, and I saw a lot of the lads buried the following day. But that's by the way. We were lucky that these bombers did come over, because if they hadn't come over just then, I'm afraid the Japanese might have known that we were there, but I expect they'd all got their heads down, and we weren't long before we turned round and went back the way we came. Anyway, we got back so far and was met by the chap who was supposed to meet us earlier, and he showed us where to set up our gun, and we was quite in sight of Fort Dufferin, and we was also in sight of the Mandalay Hill, which was just outside of us. And Mandalay Hill has about 500 temples on it, and it's one of the most famous worshipping places of the Buddhists in Burma. In fact, I had opportunity while there to go up into the temples, and I went through one tunnel that just went underneath the top of the tunnel, of the hill as you might say, and there were lots of Japanese bodies in there. They'd burned them out by rolling tins of petrol into the mouth of the tunnel and setting fire to them, and it had just acted as a chimney, and it had just roared through the old tunnel. So I mean, any Japs that was in that tunnel, either they get out quick at the other end where they'd met by a hail of bullets, or stopping them be burnt. Some of them chose one, some of them chose other. While we were there, they resolved to try to smash Fort Dufferin's walls. They got some big howitzers, 7.9s and all the heavyweight things they could get, and started firing just across a road from the fort at point blank range. Now, the Japanese, of course, were keeping their head down. The few Japs that was in, they didn't oppose anything. They just sat there and waited. And our lads were banging at these walls. And I remember every time they hit, there was just a shower of bricks came down, or stones, or whatever they were, and the wall was just as good as ever at the other side, because it was banked up, as I say, with earth. Well, while this was going on, there two guns near where we were, they were blasting away, and along the road there's a bullock cart coming. The officer gave a signal for cease firing. He waited while the bullock cart and its driver had gone past on the road, and then he said, fire, and they opened up again. Well, that was rather amusing. The Burmese native, he hadn't the slightest bit of interest in the war. He wasn't frightened of being hit, it was nothing to do with him, and he just going about his business in a lackadaisical manner. He didn't care what happened to anybody, as long as he was alright. But he might have got it, but they stopped the war to let him go past. Anyway, they decided that we should have to put our gun on our position on this Mandalay Hill, overlooking the wall, so that we could fire into the fort. When you got high up, you could look down into the fort, and the fort had a lot of buildings in it, but it was mostly parade grounds and grass fields. There's a square mile of it, so there was quite a lot of ground that was green and covered with grass. And anyway, we could see quite well into it. Well, while we were trying to level this position off to put our gun on, some fighter bombers came in, and they'd thought of another idea how to smash this embankment down. They would drop bombs, armor-piercing bombs, on the earthwork inside, try to cause them to sink so far into the earth and keep blowing it up that way. But the earth was that hard or something. Anyway, the armor-piercing bombs didn't work. They just hit the ground and skidded up and went over the moat and just over our heads, and then dropped down into the ground behind us, I think a couple hundred yards behind us. And when they went off, it made a big bang. Tell you, we thought, oh, next one's for us, because as they were coming over us, they was coming very slow and very lazily, as they were nearly at the end of the tether, and we thought the next one would be drop on us, but it didn't. So they gave up that attempt, and while we was up there was no need for us to engage Fort Dufferin, because we saw a man climbing up the flagpole at one of the corners of the fort, and while we watched through our binoculars we saw a flag break out. It was our Dagger Div flag. Some of the lads apparently had gone across, swum across, and had got in through one of these openings and scrambled up. They'd had a look round the fort and seen no one there, and to let everybody know that it was occupied by us, they'd put our divisional flag up. So the 17th Dagger Div did capture Fort Dufferin, and without a real fight. The only other building that wasn't damaged a lot, apart from some of the fort buildings, was the brewery. Now, all the men who were shelling and bombing and fighting in that area had been given strict instructions: whatever they did, they hadn't to touch or damage the brewery, as they wanted to start brewing beer as soon as they got into the town. Well, with the capture of Fort Dufferin, my army career nearly finished. We were withdrawn into India. We didn't go any further south. Some of our army went forward and met up with others that landed at Rangoon, and then the war was practically over in the Far East, and they started the scheme then of letting the men who'd been in the army longest and were above a certain age come out. Well, I was a fairly early group, and although our particular mob was training to go to Rangoon, I was withdrawn and sent to a place called Doolally to get ready to go back to England and be demobbed. Of course, I'd been away for a long while, and I couldn't possibly have told you in this little story half of the things which occurred to us, and to me in particular. For instance, I remember one place we was at, we had a gun sight, and about half a mile away there was another gun sight, and we hadn't cleaned rods. So one of our lads had to go one morning, collect the clean rods from this adjoining site, and come back, reuse them, and we used them the next day, and then took them back to the other site. One day this lad who used to do the journey for us, he came and he says, "Sarge, what's up? This is a dead wog up road there." Of course the road wasn't a road as we know it, it was just a path through the jungle. Alright. And I never thought of going to look or question him at all. The following day he says, "You know that wog I was telling you about?" He says, "Jattles have been at him or something." Alright. His eyes were pulling to bits. I still thought he was pulling my leg. I never thought about checking up on it. Following day he came back with a skull on end of a stick. It had been picked clean by ants, and we stuck it up on a pole again our billets, and we used to talk to it as though it was a human being. It had been a human being about a week before, but to look at it you'd have thought he'd been dead for 50 years, because it was absolutely clean picked by ants. And it appears that a lot of people in that area, which was noted for its snakes, a lot of particularly dangerous snakes were in that area, and if anyone went out at night, the natives, they used to go and they they'd have a bamboo stick which had a crack in it and a lamp. As they were going along the road or the lane or across the fields or where they were, they used to be tapping this stick on the floor and showing the lamp, so that if any snake were there it would get out of their way. A snake won't attack unless it's trod on. Usually they're not given to attacking unless they have provocation. Another time I know there was lots of Indians working there, and one of these Indians, oh by the way, the Indians used to, on this contract work, they used to sleep in some billets and their women folk used to sleep in others. And if a man wanted to go and visit his wife, he used to have to go and visit his wife in the ladies' quarters. And after he'd been with her so long, of course he used to go back to his own billets. And that was all the married life they used to have. But one man went to visit his wife in the ladies' quarters, and he found another gentleman there. So he drew his knife. The man who was with his wife ran off, and the man stabbed his wife, killed her, and then went back to his billets. And the head man knew about it, and he was right. It's all right, it's 24 hours. They gave him 24 hours so that he could kill the man if he could catch him, and then he was expected to give himself up. Well, no one would give shelter to the man who'd been flirting with the wife, and within the 24 hours the outraged husband had caught up to him, and he stabbed him, and then he gave himself up. There's all sorts of queer things used to happen. For instance, I remember the son of this particular head man died, and instead of them all mourning and crying and weeping and like that, they all started singing and laughing and feasting and making a big to-do as though it was a wedding or a birthday party. Apparently in their religion they're supposed to be happy when their particular gods take anyone that they love, and to show their happiness at them being so blessed, they of course pretend to be happy even though their heart's breaking. While at Dullally, I was called on to go to a funeral because I was RA and the man who died was RA. There's all sorts of different regiments and whatnot there, but me being a sergeant, I expected thought I was a representative of the RA. Suppose this chap, he served for quite a long while in the battle zone. He just got back to Dullally and was going home when he was taken ill, and within an hour or two he died. I thought that was particularly sad. But as I say, I had to represent the RA, and we did feel sorry for the chap, but we were a little bit keen on getting home. The day came when we went down to Bombay from Dullally, and we were put on board a ship which is called the Winchester Castle, and from Bombay we went up across the Indian Ocean, up through the Suez Canal and along the Mediterranean. We saw most of the sights on the canal side and most of the big towns and islands and whatnot that we passed. We was told what was what by someone over a loudspeaker, and it made the journey rather interesting.